Hey guys, so welcome back to the channel, and today we'll be going through this unboxing of hopefully my very last keyboard for the day of the year, and it's the Meletrix Zoom75 TIGA. And as you can see, it came here with a hardshell case, and of course inside it's packed with all of the goodies that we just ordered. Yeah, so you guys will be ordering a couple of things, and what I have here is the plate of choice, your Cork sandwich that I ordered, and also your PCB. So I went with the palm plate on the far right, and then the Cork sandwich as my dampening material of choice, and of course your non-flex 1.6 mm PCB. Now you'll also be getting 4 mounting styles by Meletrix, and I have them here shown. So the first one is the split O-ring mount, and that's the most flexy option. You also get your silica gel particle mount and the elastic bar mount next, and finally you have the stiffest, which is the top mount screws. You also get a Meletrix screwdriver over here that I'm struggling to open, but yeah, basically it's just a very simple screwdriver. One thing I will say is that I wished it was a magnetic screwdriver, but it's not, and otherwise I think it's fine. It's just a bit bulky, I would say. You also get accessories like your badges. So on the left you get it for free, but on the right I had to purchase it by myself. And you also get your cable. This feels super cheap to me. I think we could have gotten a braided cable at the very least. And I think this is the last one, which is the stabilizers, and this is the Wuche Studio stupid stabs. And the reason why it's a stupid stab is that it's designed to prevent any sort of ticking that you'll hear a bit later with how it's designed. And finally, we have the keyboard itself. So I got myself the TIGA, and specifically I got the sky blue variant. So you can see here, it's a very nice powder blue with some lavender tones. So on the base, you could see the tone of the lavender, but also towards the bottom. So side profile, this is a really nice side profile. But of course, the standout feature is the back design. I really love this grill cage look. And honestly, it just looks like a super beautiful board. Now, taking into the board's looks, it has an incredibly nice finish. I got the sky blue variant with the accustatic finish, and in Meletrix's own words, it's supposed to be the latest and most accurate electrostatic spray, allowing for more colors and higher consistency. In my opinion, it's a bit muted, but it has a nice matte look going for it, which vibes better with this color in my opinion than a shiny anodized finish. Now, moving on to the top, it has an excellent top view. I really like the knob. It's very tastefully done, and it has enough friction to prevent any misslips. It also has a very nice customizable corner that you can go with either an LCD screen, extra buttons, or even some customizable badges. In terms of the side view, it has a super nice side view, and it has a winged accent up front with a nice tritone color going for it. However, I'm not a very huge fan of the visible screws on the volume knob. In terms of the bottom aesthetic, this is my favorite aesthetic of the entire board. The lavender bottom looks so gorgeous and will fit the inspiration of today's build a bit later. And the cross patterns are so awesome, albeit can be a hit or miss to some people, but in my opinion, I prefer this fresh and unique design rather than some normal PVD weights with the company's logo on it. Also, I dislike the smudges those weights attract, so in my eyes, this is a big positive in my book. In terms of dimensions, this board features a very approachable 6.5 degrees typing angle, and this is a plus for me because I prefer something closer to the 5 to 6 degree range, and it has a very manageable front height of 17.6 millimeters. You don't really need a wrist rest for this. Now, it also features a ball catch system for easy disassembly and magnetic pogo connections on everything. I do like the ball catch system. It's really nice, especially if you take apart boards very often. However, on the magnetic pogo connections, I feel like they could have done this way better. It has these dangling ribbon cables that you see, and honestly, I would have just gotten rid of it and just substituted it with something else like what the Neo did. Now, in terms of mountings, you get 4 options. From my testing, here are my most to least stiff. And the first one is the top mount. I actually skipped this option when building as it's very difficult to build. And from what I can gather, it's because the ball catch system is difficult to detach once you've put the top mount plate into the case. So I don't really want to play around with that. So that's the stiffest. Moving into the Silica gel mount, this is my second favorite option and it's the second stiffest. It's basically a top mount with some form of cushion through the particles. It doesn't have much, if at all, flex, but it's good enough that I don't feel any rebound on my fingers. In terms of sound, this is the clackiest option except top mount, and I'd recommend it for clacky builds. One note is that due to the stiffness, your board sounds incredibly stiff. On the good side, it really brings out the Cork character to its fullest, which is a crispy, crunchy sound. While on the bad, it can make your board sound very one note and lacking any sort of depth. Moving into the elastic bar mount, this is my favorite option for THOCKY builds. It gives good enough flex and it's extremely easy to attach. In terms of character, it has a very noticeable deep sound compared to the Silica gel, but at the expense of losing a bit of that Cork crispness. I would recommend this for foamless THOCKY builds or even clacky switches to get a super nice mid-tone board. Finally, we have the split O-ring mount, which is the least stiff option and has the most flex and is extremely comfortable to type on. However, I dislike this option because it's very easy to lose parts. You have small screws, small transparent O-rings, and Wuche doesn't give a single extra piece. I actually lost one of the O-rings the other day and spent a whole day searching for it. It's not a good experience. In terms of sound profile, it lends itself more to THOCKY, but I'd rather just use the elastic bar mount. There isn't much sound difference at all. Now, in terms of customizability, this is where the board really shines. The amount of combinations is endless. First off, there's 15 colorways from the office-appropriate gunmetal grey to a pastel-ish strawberry ice cream to loud in-your-face scarlet red. And definitely you will be able to find something that you like. You also get a choice of 3 dampening foam kits, the traditional EVA foam, a nice pour-on foam, and the most unique of the bunch, which is the Cork sandwich over here, which I have. Now, more on the Cork sandwich. This was the entire reason why I actually bought this board, and it's supposed to cleave off a bit of the highs and maintain the mid and lows intact. So it's an aspiration of mine to sort of build a foamless THOCKY build, and I think Cork will help me do that. Moving into the plate options, you have a lot of different plates. You even have the flexi plastics like PC and POM. So I have the POM plate over here. It's extremely soft. You also have the firmer FR4 and even the traditional alu plates. So a lot of plate options. The only thing I would say is that there's actually a brass add-on plate. I believe there's also 1 or 2 others. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Wuche doesn't allow us to purchase that with this board. So you have to purchase it as an add-on. I don't know why that is, although I did want the POM plate, but looking back into the sound test that you'll hear in a bit, I think the brass plate is what I will be going for in terms of like upgrade. Now, there's 2 PCB options that you can also choose. A 1.2mm flex cut or a 1.6mm non-flex cut. So I have the non-flex cut PCB over here, and that is because it's supposed to help us or help me to get a louder board. Now, as a fun fact, with 15 colorways, 4 plate options, 3 dampening kits, 2 PCB options, 4 mounting styles, you technically have 1,440 ways to build this board. It's incredibly insane, and that's why this board has an A+ in terms of customizability options. Now, moving into some of the switches that we'll be using. For a clacky build, I'm going with the Cloud V2s. Right now it's just the only clacky switch I sort of have, but honestly it's a very balanced clack. I really like it. For a more THOCKY type of build, I just recently got the Keygeek Blue Cheese V2s, and these are supposed to be super deep and super THOCKY, and based on my testing, it's actually quite a bit louder than the Vertex V1s and deeper, so it's just a all-around improved Vertex V1. And I also like to include the HMX Sonja HCs every now and then, because this is a scratchy switch. Spoiler alert, I will be getting cherry Nixies in a bit, but until I get them, this will be the representation cherry, not cherry, but like a classic switch. For keycaps, we'll be going with the MKB Valkyrie. It features a pastel pink lavender blue colorway that suits the keyboard. And the main inspiration of the build is Johnny Joestar from Steel Ball Run, specifically his manga version. And I'm combining not just his manga look, which is in blue on the screen, but also his stand tusk, which is a pastel strong pink type of color. This keycap set is also double shot PBT, and that's nice because it's a more talkish type of sound and it's cherry profile. And without further ado, let's jump straight into the sound test. Alright, now moving into the sound summary after all of those sound tests. In terms of the Cork Foamless, meaning without the case foam, this is by far my favorite sound profile, which is what I have right now. The Cork adds a very unique crispness to the sound that makes it feel almost crunchy, and all three switches sounded fantastic. But I particularly like the punchy, THOCKY Blue Cheese V2s and the loud, crispy Cloud V2s. In terms of the Cork Foamy build, that's also very nice, especially if you want to get a louder sound. I'd recommend the bottom case foam for that. A louder talk sound, I mean. And in terms of like a clacky build, I feel you can just skip the case foam, as the Cork and the clacky switches that you pick already give plenty of character and plenty of loudness. In terms of Foamless, honestly, this board just doesn't sound good for any of the Foamless switches I tried. I dislike them all. In terms of the Cloud V2s, which sounded fantastic on my Neo, it sounded very dead and muted on the Zoom. I think it's a couple of things at play here, to be honest. A lack of acoustic chamber, less metal fillers because this has a battery, and perhaps even less space. It's very cramped behind the Zoom. I was trying to put in the case foam, and even sometimes I would face difficulties trying to get this case to close. It's just that cramped. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the Cork specifically. I feel like the Cork is such a great option. It's such a unique sound it adds. However, please note that it does dampen your switches quite a bit. For clacky builds, I found that it doesn't really matter because clacky boards are usually loud enough. But for THOCKY switches like the Blue Cheese, I added actually 2 layers of tape mod just to bring the volume back up. Otherwise, it was far too quiet in my personal opinion. Now, what are my final thoughts? I feel like this, in terms of pros, it's super customizable for 200 USD. That's about 800 ringgit, so it's quite expensive. However, for the amount of money you're paying, you're basically having a lot of options to choose. It's basically endless, and it's great for people that are craving for those options. In terms of sound profile, it's excellent with the exception of the pure Foamless. However, I think that the Cork option adds a very new dimension to this keyboard sound, and that makes this board stand out from the rest, even from the Zoom, not the Zoom, but the Neo 75 that I have. It has good PCB layouts, I would say even great options with split spacebars, and even a 7U. You can fit a 7U spacebar over here, and there's much more layout customizations over here. And finally, the last point I want to bring up, it has very nice tabs. Now, in my eyes, these are A+ tabs, the Wuche Studio stupid tabs. However, it can sound mushy. So if you're not a fan of mush, that might not be what you like. But I would rather some slight mushiness instead of any sort of ticking that I got from my Neo 75. So to me, that's slightly more important than the sound optimization. Now, in terms of cons, there are quite a bit, and the elephant in the room is definitely the price point. At 200 USD, it's very expensive compared to the 2026 competition. And that's a big ask because the Neo 75 comes at 140 USD. Granted, there are some features that are not present, but still, that's 60 USD more. Now, the volume knob I found didn't really work that smoothly. Sometimes when I were to put just one, if I were to slightly roll it up, sometimes it would work. Sometimes I would have to roll it up 2 to 3 times more than usual for it to actually take effect on the soundbar. I don't know if I made any sense, but basically it's not consistent. Sometimes you move it a bit and it works. Sometimes you have to move it a long way for it to actually do something. So that's a really bad thing for me, but I do like the knob design and the knob placement. Like I said in the past, I am a fan of tastefully done volume knobs because I do use them often. Now, there are certain aspects of this build that are annoying. The first one are these dangly things. So this this, I don't know why we have this when it's on pogos. I feel like they should have just stuck on it and gave it slightly longer pogo sticks. It's just super hard to handle, and honestly, if you're doing this for the first time, you will be challenged. And my only tip for you guys is when you're trying to hook the side pieces to your knobs and your LCD screen, just make sure that you put these rubber mountings in and then slightly lift and push them in here so that it's seated nicely. Okay, now aside from that, the finish also seems slightly less nicely done compared to the Neo, in the sense that it's a bit grainy. I'm not sure if that is part of the look, but if you're not a fan of the grainy sort of design, then you might not like this finish. I'm not sure if the other Zoom75 boards have a slightly more cleaner finish. That's unfortunately I only have this one to work with. And yes, other than that, I don't like some of the other miscellaneous decisions. The first one is I actually bought a badge, but I couldn't use it because I would need a module to sort of replace the LCD here such that my badge would not fall through. So that's another 12 USD, which I'm not a big fan of. I feel like they should have just included one mount here for your badges, and if you want a customized badge, then yeah, you pay more for that customized badge, but not for the mounting. Aside from that, one thing that really to me was a big impact was the lack of spare parts. So specifically, I have here the O-rings, and I'm not a fan of them. I will switch them up for the elastic bar mounts because you only get one of each. And honestly, these O-rings here, because they're so elastic, if you're not careful, they might just shoot out and who knows where it will fly to. And that's exactly what happened. I was trying to place it in, I lost my grip, it just flew away, and I spent one day trying to find this. Luckily, I did find it back, but that's not the only thing. You also have these very small screws that if you lose them, then it's just game over. You don't have a replacement for it. So I feel like they should have included some spares. I felt like that's something that Neo did well. They did provide some spares just in case you lost something. I feel like just one or two spares like O-rings would have been great, not the exact number that they gave. But yeah, that's basically my comments on the pros and the cons. Now the final question would be, who should be buying this? And I think this board is only a buy if you're gunning for the Cork sandwich. I don't think it's worth it if you are not looking for it, if you're going for like the EVA foam or the Poron foam, because there are cheaper boards that you can get that already come with that, like the Evo 75 at about 170, 180 USD, or even the Neo 75 at 140 USD. Of course, you're paying a bit more, like 60 USD for the LCD screen, the volume knob, some of the customizability options, your RGB backlight as well. So I'll leave it up to you to decide if that's worth it for you. Personally, this is a really nice pickup for my collection, mainly because I am trying to build a foamless THOCKY build. And I feel like one way to do that is using this Cork sandwich, which is what I'm trying to experiment with. And hence you guys will be seeing this board a lot in the future, as I will be using it to represent my THOCKY switches, which I feel like it's doing a good job. But yeah, aside from that, this is probably the last keyboard I will be reviewing for this year. So after this, I'll just be going through switch reviews and maybe some other guides or like look backs on what I have been learning throughout this journey. But yeah, stay tuned, and until next time, peace.